My family stole $13,000 from my account after I paid for my brother's wedding, so I made one call that turned the tables and forced the truth out. I'm Zoe, 34 years old, living in Denver and working as a financial director for a tech company. Last weekend, I flew to San Diego to attend my younger brother Jason's wedding. It was a stunning outdoor ceremony by the beach, filled with laughter. I covered most of the expenses because my parents are retired, and Jason and his new wife had just finished paying off their student loans. I didn't hesitate. After all, it's family, right? The next morning, as my boyfriend Marcus and I were checking out of the hotel to fly back to Denver, I opened my banking app to pay for the room. What I saw made me freeze. "What is it?" Marcus asked, noticing my hands shaking as I held the phone. "Marcus," I swallowed hard, "$13,000 is gone." He immediately grabbed the phone and checked. "Are you sure? Just last week you told me you had over $20,000. "Exactly 21,000, I said. "Now it's only 8,000. Marcus scrolled through the transaction history, and my chest tightened as the screen filled with names. $4,000 to Rachel Dunn, my sister, $5,000 to Kevin Dunn, $4,000 to Karen Bloom, my mother. All transactions were made at 10:47 p.m. last night. I stood frozen. "That was when I was taking a shower after the wedding," I said. "Someone had used my phone." Marcus looked up, his eyes serious. "We need to call the bank right now." I nodded blankly. As we rode the elevator down, I felt like my whole body was on fire, not from anger, but from heartbreak. I'd always helped my family, never asked for a dime back, and now they did this. Just as we reached the lobby, my phone rang. It was my mom, I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. "Mom, I need to ask something. 3 large sums were transferred out of my account last night. Do you know anything about that?" There was silence for a few seconds. Then she chuckled like I'd asked her about the weather. "Oh, that! I thought you'd notice sooner. Honestly, it was less than I expected." I was stunned. "Mom, what are you saying? Rachel said it was wasteful leaving that much in your account, so we split it up. Consider it a wedding gift for Jason." My jaw dropped, my eyes blurred, not from tears, but from shock. Marcus stepped closer, and I put the call on speaker. "Mom, that's theft," I said, my voice cracking. "Don't be so dramatic, Zoe. We're family. You're single. You have a good salary. You should help out." "What, are you going to hoard your money and live alone forever?" Marcus grabbed the phone. "Hello, ma'am. I'm Zoe's boyfriend. What you just admitted to is a criminal act. Taking money from someone's account without permission is illegal." She responded coldly. "Are you a lawyer, or just someone who likes meddling in other people's families?" I snatched the phone back. "Mom, who took my phone to transfer the money?" "Rachel," she said. "She said your password was too easy to guess." Then she hung up. I stood there for a moment. Marcus took my hand and squeezed it tightly. "We're not letting this go." I nodded, heart torn between pain and fury. I had trusted them. I called them family. But what I got wasn't love, it was betrayal. I don't even remember how we got to my parents' house. Everything was a blur, except for Marcus's voice beside me, steady and resolute. "We need to talk to them in person." The 2-story house in the San Diego suburbs looked familiar but felt painfully distant. The door opened before I could ring the bell. Rachel, my sister, stood there with a half-smile. "Oh, Zoe, you came back." I walked straight in without a word. In the living room, Mom was sorting through Jason's wedding photos. Kevin, Rachel's husband, had his feet on the table, sipping coffee. "We need to talk," I said, cutting to the point. Mom looked up, her face calm and detached. "About the money?" "Yes," I replied, eyes scanning the room. "I want to know why you, Rachel, and Kevin thought you had the right to take money from my bank account." Rachel shrugged. "You should have picked a better password than your old cat's name. It was too easy." Kevin laughed. "I even told Rachel not to do it, but she said you wouldn't care." My fists clenched, heat spreading through my chest. "I wouldn't care? You took $13,000. That's not spare change." Mom set the album down and stood up slowly. "Zoe, don't blow this out of proportion. It was just a gift for Jason. I thought it made sense. You're single, earning 6 figures. Jason's starting married life with debt. Families help each other. Helping means I agree to it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This was stealing. Why didn't anyone ask me? Rachel dropped into a chair. Because you'd say no. You always act generous, but you never really give. We're tired of begging. So you stole my phone while I was in the shower and sent the money yourselves? I turned to Marcus, trying to keep calm. Kevin shook his head, smirking. You should be grateful they only took that much. You still have $8,000 left. I looked at Mom. You knew, didn't you? She nodded without shame. I even suggested it. Kevin needed car repairs. Rachel has Olivia's school fees. And I used my part for medication. I don't see why you're so upset. Marcus stepped in, his hand on my back. Because it's wrong, and Zoe has every right to be upset. No one has the right to touch her money without asking. Rachel scoffed. You again? Don't you lawyers have bigger things to worry about than a few $1,000s in a family? I turned to her, my voice now frighteningly calm. Don't justify it. Being family doesn't mean you get to cross the line. You didn't just take money, you took my trust. The room fell silent. Only the ticking clock broke the tension. Mom finally spoke. You're talking to your mother and sister like we're strangers. I looked her in the eye. Because that's exactly how it feels. Kevin stood, arms crossed. So what now? You going to sue us? Take the whole family to court? I pulled out a stack of papers. Over the past 3 years, I've given over $20,000 for everyone's requests. Never once was it paid back. And I never complained because I thought I was being a daughter, a sister, family. But as of today, that ends. Rachel jumped to her feet. You won't dare do anything, Zoe. You don't want to break this family apart. I smirked. I'm not breaking anything. This family already did that on its own. I turned toward the door. Every step felt heavy, but I knew this time there was no turning back, not when they treated my sacrifices as expected, not when they saw me as someone who existed only to carry their burdens. Marcus opened the car door, and as I slid in, he said gently, You just did something most people never have the courage to do. And you're not alone. I used to think I was lucky. I had a stable job, a good income, no marriage or children to tie me down. I was free to live as I pleased and help my family without much worry. But when I returned from San Diego that day, I sat in my Denver apartment and opened every email, every message, every bank statement, and the picture became clear, a picture I never wanted to see. On Saturday afternoon, I pulled out all my financial records from the past 3 years. I printed monthly statements marking in red every transfer to family members. Each one came with a new excuse, a soft plea, and a dose of guilt if I ever hesitated. Olivia's tuition is due. Can you lend me $2,000? I'll pay you back soon. Mom needs to fix the heating. It's cold this winter. You don't want her getting sick, right? My car broke down on the highway. Can you spot me $1,000? I'll pay you back tomorrow. No one ever paid me back. No one ever asked if I was okay. I added it all up, nearly $26,000, a number that made my chest tighten. And then there were birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, dinners for the whole family, Olivia's graduation party, roof repairs for Mom. The list felt endless. Marcus walked into the living room and saw me buried in papers. Have you eaten anything? I shook my head. Not hungry. Look at this. I've been taken advantage of year after year. He sat beside me, quietly reading through my notes. This wasn't just borrowing. It was a plan. I nodded. Back then, I thought it was love. But every time I hesitated, they said the same things. We're family, or worse, you're so selfish. It's not like you're struggling. I remembered the time Rachel called me in the middle of my shift, sobbing that Olivia had broken her arm. The hospital needs $400 up front, and I don't have it. Please, Zoe. I transferred the money immediately. I found out later insurance had covered everything. Rachel used the money to place a deposit on a new phone for Kevin. I used to blame myself for being too soft. But now I was angry. Angry that I'd been emotionally manipulated for so long without realizing it. Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. Have you thought about taking action? I was silent long enough that he thought I wasn't going to respond. Then I said slowly, if a stranger stole $13,000 from my account, I'd report it to the police. So why should I stay quiet just because it was family? You shouldn't, Marcus said. They had no right. But if I report it, I'll lose them forever. I said. Marcus looked at me, gentle but firm. You never had them. Not really. They only had you when they needed money. I turned to him. If this happened to you, would you report it? I wouldn't just report it, he said. I'd follow through. Not for revenge, but for justice and to make sure it never happens again. That stayed with me all night. I didn't sleep. I reopened every message from Rachel, from Mom, from Kevin. Each line was coded in the sweet tone of control. Zoe, if you don't help, I don't know what I'll do. You know Mom's pension isn't much. I know you're busy, but family is family. Are you really going to ignore this? It's just a loan, not like we're keeping it. But in the end, they did keep it. Not just the money, but my trust. I sat up, opened my laptop, and began drafting a detailed document listing every support payment over the past 3 years. I saved it under the file name The Truth. I didn't know yet who I'd send it to or how I'd use it, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let this keep happening. No one deserves to live in a cycle of exploitation masked as family, and I, Zoe, their endless wallet, wouldn't be that person anymore. The next morning, as sunlight poured through the living room window, Marcus was already at the dining table, laptop open beside a thick file of documents. You're up, he said as I stepped out, my eyes still swollen from a restless night. I called an old colleague. She works at a law office that handles financial crimes. I sat down, gripping my coffee mug. And what did she say? This falls under familial financial exploitation. You can press charges if you gather enough evidence. I stayed silent for a moment. Outside, traffic hummed steadily, but inside, I felt a storm. I never imagined I'd have to go against my own family, not in an argument, but in a legal case. Are you sure about this, Marcus? This is my family. He nodded, eyes locked on mine. That's exactly why it's worse. They knew you trusted them, and they abused it. I took a deep breath. So, where do we start? Marcus slid the folder toward me. I compiled all your transactions over the past 3 years. These are the bank statements. Here are the texts, emails, every time they asked for money. I marked each entry with dates and amounts. I flipped through the pages, feeling like I was reading the history of my own unraveling. Every number, every message, I'm short on rent, Mom needs meds, help me this one last time, cut deeper than the last. Over $26,000, Zoe, Marcus said softly. $13,000 of that was unauthorized, including what they transferred from your phone at the hotel. I nodded, whispering, enough. That afternoon, we went to the Colorado office for financial crime investigation. The officer who met with us was a woman in her 40s, hair neatly pinned, wearing a name tag, Tina Hargrove, Family Financial Crimes Unit. Miss Zoe Green, she asked, scanning my report. I'll need you to walk me through everything from the beginning. It took me nearly an hour to recount it all, from Jason's wedding to the morning I discovered the missing money to confronting my family. Tina took notes silently, only nodding or asking brief, pointed questions. Do you have evidence? She asked finally. Marcus opened his briefcase, handing over the file. It's all here. Bank transfers, text messages, even an audio recording from the confrontation at Karen Dunn's house, Zoe's mother. Tina flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable, but her eyes sharpened. This isn't uncommon, she said at last. What is uncommon is someone speaking up, especially when the offenders are relatives. I clenched my hands. I used to think staying silent would keep the peace, but not this time. I need to protect myself. Tina nodded. We'll start a preliminary investigation, verifying account activity, tracking IP addresses from the transfers, interviewing those involved. If we find enough evidence of unauthorized access and misappropriation, the case will go to the district attorney. I swallowed. Will they be arrested? That depends, Tina replied. If intent is proven, they'll have to repay the funds at the very least, possibly face probation, depending on cooperation. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table. On the way home, I still felt shaken, like I'd signed a declaration of war, not against strangers, but blood. That night, I received the first message from my mom. Zoe, I heard you're suing the whole family. What's going on? Call me. I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. I wasn't the obedient daughter anymore, the one who sacrificed without complaint. This time, I'd let the law speak for me and I wouldn't look back. The first message came at 6:13 a.m., the next morning while I was still tossing in bed. Mom? Zoe, what are you doing? Did you really report this? 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from Rachel, Mom, even Kevin, all echoing the same themes: blame, guilt, accusation. Rachel, are you out of your mind? You're sending your whole family to jail over a few $1,000s, Kevin. You're unbelievably selfish. Olivia and Ethan will be affected. Don't you care about the kids? Mom, I raised you, and now you're turning your back on the whole family. Do you even have a heart? I sat up, heart pounding. Not a single apology. Not even a hint of remorse. Just anger and manipulation. Marcus walked in with a cup of hot tea. He glanced at my phone, lighting up nonstop, and sighed, setting the cup on the table. Still blaming you, huh? He asked in a low voice. I nodded and handed him the phone. It feels like I just betrayed the whole family, but they're the ones who betrayed me, right? Marcus didn't answer right away. He just sat beside me, took my hand, and said, They're not mad because you did something wrong. They're mad because for the first time you didn't let them use you. That line tore through the fog in my mind. That afternoon, Mom called. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered because I needed to face this. Zoe! Her voice rang out, sharp and wounded. You've disappointed me. What will people think? Are you trying to shame your whole family? Mom, they took my money without asking. They did it behind my back. You think that's normal? She scoffed. You have more than enough with your salary. $13,000 is nothing. And now you're using that to humiliate your own blood. I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. No one has the right to take from someone just because they think that person can handle it. They didn't ask. They didn't request. They took. You're pushing yourself out of this family, Mom said quietly. You made your choice. Don't blame me when you end up alone. I closed my eyes. No one's pushing me, Mom. Everyone made their choice when they did this. I'm just setting boundaries. The line went dead after a heavy sigh. An hour later, I got an email from Rachel. The subject line was in all caps, You destroyed this family. The content was a string of accusations, that I was full of myself because of money, disrespecting relatives, and shameless for dragging the family into court. I read it all, every word, and not a single tear fell. Marcus saw me sitting silently at my computer and gently asked, You okay? I nodded. I'm just thinking, how many years did it take me to realize their love only existed when I paid for it? He squeezed my shoulder. You're not alone. You have me, and there will be others, people who love you for who you are. That night, I wrote a journal entry. They say I destroyed the family, but a real family isn't built on exploitation and manipulation. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to be a victim anymore. 3 days later, I received an email from the family's lawyer, someone Kevin knew. They asked me to withdraw my complaint and resolve things internally to avoid emotional harm to the children. I replied with a single line, I'll let the law decide what's right or wrong. Children should be taught that fraud is not excused by blood. Marcus read my response and smiled. Zoe, you're doing the right thing and you're stronger than ever. I nodded, still trembling inside. But it was the kind of trembling that comes when you finally step out of the shadows with no intention of going back. One grisly afternoon, after a meeting with the financial crimes attorney, the doorbell rang. Through the glass, I saw Jason, my younger brother, standing under the porch roof, hands in his jacket pockets, eyes fixed on the ground like he was wrestling with himself. I opened the door. Jason? He looked up, eyes uncertain but sincere. Can I talk to you for a few minutes? I nodded silently, avoiding his eyes as I let him in. The air was thick with tension. Jason hadn't texted or called all week. I knew he was torn between his old family and the truth. You doing okay? He asked softly, his gaze landing on the dining table where my financial documents were still spread out. Getting by, I replied. And you? You know what's going on, right? He sat down, hands clenched. I know everything. I just didn't know what to do. I looked straight into the eyes of the boy I used to carry on my hip. So, why are you here, Jason? He took a deep breath, and spoke slowly. I don't know if you'll believe me, but I didn't know they were going to do that night. I never thought Rachel would actually take your phone and transfer the money. I stayed silent. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part still bore the scars of his blind loyalty in the past. And I know this isn't the first time, Jason continued, eyes reddening. Over the past few years, I overheard Rachel and Kevin talking about how to borrow from you without making you upset. I even saw Mom keeping a list of holidays to decide what to ask from you next. My hands tightened. My heart felt crushed. And you stayed silent all this time? Because I was a coward, Jason whispered, head bowed. I was scared that if I spoke up they'd turn on me. I just started a family. I didn't want to be cast out. I swallowed, forcing down the tremble in my voice. And now? Now I get it, he said, eyes glistening. They didn't just take your money. They took your trust. They took the kindness you gave to all of us. I was speechless. You know, Jason said, after you filed the complaint, Mom told me to keep my mouth shut. She said if I got called to court, I should say I didn't know anything. But I can't do that. Not to you, not to my conscience. I looked up at my little brother, the one who had disappointed me the most. And now he was standing there, so brave it made me want to cry. I'll testify, Jason said firmly. I'll tell the court they planned this, that it wasn't the first time. I'll tell the truth. I reached out and took his hand. Are you sure? You know this will make them turn their backs on you. I know, Jason nodded. But if I have to choose, I choose truth. I choose you. On the day of the preliminary hearing, Jason wore a dark suit and stood tall in the witness box. The courtroom was silent as he spoke about the times he heard Mom planning how to ask Zoe for money cleverly, the texts he saw between Rachel and Kevin, the whispered conversations behind my back that he'd overheard but never dared to confront. When Jason said, I stayed silent because I was scared, but I can't stay silent anymore, I saw a spark of conviction in Tina's eyes, the lead investigator. My attorney gave a small nod. I could feel the momentum shifting. Rachel and Kevin sat across the room, pale-faced. Mom kept her head down, unable to meet Jason's eyes, but my brother stood firm for the first time, like a real man. When the hearing ended, I walked out into the hallway where Jason stood alone. You okay? I asked quietly. He nodded. I lost my family today. I gripped his hand. No, you still have me. And for the first time in my life, I'm proud of you. The hearing took place on a gloomy Monday morning just after a night of rain. I sat in the courtroom, feeling hollow, my eyes fixed on the wooden plaque that read Jefferson County Court. Rachel and Kevin sat only a few steps away, but they felt like they belonged to a different world, distant, cold, and calculated. They didn't bow their heads in remorse. Rachel sat upright, lips pressed tight, while Kevin remained composed as if he were at a board meeting. Mom didn't show up. She claimed health issues and submitted a formal excuse for her absence. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table. They're going to be held accountable, Zoe. You've done everything right. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. When the judge entered, the courtroom fell silent. It was Judge Nora Higgins, a woman in her 60s, eyes sharp as blades, her voice calm but commanding. Today we are hearing case number 1-827B, involving charges of unauthorized access and misappropriation of personal assets by defendants Rachel Dunn and Kevin Dunn. My attorney laid out everything: the transaction records, text messages, Jason's testimony, and banking evidence. Rachel's lawyer argued financial stress, no harmful intent, and a desire to resolve this privately within the family. Judge Higgins listened without a single expression, never interrupting. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, heart pounding like a drum, but my voice was steadier than I expected. I don't want to be here. I never imagined a day would come when I'd have to take my sister and brother-in-law to court, but they accessed my bank account without permission, transferred money, and when confronted offered no apology. Instead, they blamed me and called me a traitor. I'm not here for the money. I'm here to say that trust is not something that can be taken and then dismissed with the excuse we're family. The room stayed silent. I noticed the judge's gaze softened slightly. Marcus gently squeezed my hand again. At the end, after over an hour of deliberation, Judge Higgins returned to the bench. After reviewing the full evidence, testimony, and circumstances of the case, the court finds defendants Rachel Dunn and Kevin Dunn guilty of unauthorized access and misappropriation of personal assets. Given this is a first-time offense and the defendants have young children, the court rules as follows. First, the defendants are sentenced to 3 years of probation with behavioral monitoring and no further offenses allowed during this period. Second, they are ordered to repay the stolen amount of $12,000 and an additional $5,000 in emotional damages to the plaintiff. Third, a restraining order is hereby issued against the defendants, barring any form of contact with the plaintiff, Miss Zoe Green, for 5 years. This includes in-person, phone, text, social media, or through any third party. Lastly, all court fees are to be covered by the defendants. I sat still, heart frozen, not from joy but from shock. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but all I felt was a cold wave spreading down my spine. Rachel didn't move. Kevin turned to their lawyer, his face pale. Jason got up, came to my side, and rested a hand on my shoulder. "You did it." I looked at my brother, then at Marcus. I didn't know if it was victory, but at least I had protected myself. When we stepped outside the courtroom, the sun had broken through. The raindrops, still clinging to the steps, sparkled under the pale golden light. Marcus opened the car door. "Do you want to go anywhere?" I shook my head. "I just want to go home. I'm tired." On the drive back, my phone rang, an unknown number. I didn't answer. A message appeared right after. "You think you've won? We're not going to kneel." I didn't need to read the sender's name to know who it was. I powered off my phone and looked out the window. The trees rushed by. I wasn't afraid anymore. The first message I received came from Jason 3 weeks after the hearing. "Zoe, I thought you should know. Kevin just got fired." I froze in the kitchen, steam rising from the tea in my hand. Jason explained that Kevin's company, a regional finance firm, had terminated his contract immediately after the court ruling appeared in their internal database. Charges of personal asset theft and unauthorized access weren't just a breach of trust, they violated the company's strict internal policies. But it didn't end there. 2 days later, my attorney informed me that, under the civil enforcement order, Rachel and Kevin's bank accounts were officially frozen for restitution collection. All income sources, including joint savings, were locked. In the weeks that followed, Marcus relayed more news. The bank had begun foreclosure proceedings on the house Rachel and Kevin lived in. They'd missed 2 consecutive payments. I read the message, feeling oddly calm. No satisfaction, no pain, just a clear understanding. Every action has its price. One October afternoon, I ran into a former employee at a furniture store, someone who had worked with Rachel on a volunteer project. She leaned in and said quietly, almost apologetically, "Rachel, she looks different now. Gaunt, always irritable. I heard she's selling stuff online from home. They had to cancel their high-speed internet, switch to a budget plan." I just gave a faint smile. The woman stared at me a moment, then whispered, "Maybe this is the first time she's ever had to face the consequences of her own actions." Even as the updates kept coming, frozen accounts, house up for sale, Kevin blacklisted from hiring, I no longer felt guilty. For years, I had lived torn between helping and enduring. I used to think sacrifice was a duty in family, but now I understood no one has the right to call exploitation an act of love. I began carving out time for myself. I took pottery classes on Saturdays, morning yoga in the park. I started journaling again each day. I felt lighter. Marcus was always there. He never pushed me to forgive, but he was the first to teach me the difference between kindness and surrender. One evening while we were cooking together, my phone rang, an unknown number. I answered. A familiar voice came through. "Zoe?" I didn't respond right away. "Can you do something to help Rachel and the kids? The house is about to be taken. Kevin lost his job. Rachel's barely holding on." I was silent for a while. "You're calling to ask for money?" "No," she said. "I just thought maybe you could help your sister through this. After all, you're sisters." I closed my eyes. Part of me was still that little girl longing for unconditional love from my mother. But then I was also the Zoe I am now. Mom, if you want to help them, then teach them to take responsibility. Teach them not to treat people like personal banks. Don't call it help when it's rooted in deceit and manipulation. She didn't say a word. After a moment, she hung up. No thank you, no regret. I set my phone down on the table and looked at Marcus. I just turned my mother down. No, he replied. You just chose yourself. At night, as I stepped out onto the balcony, the autumn breeze brushed gently against my cheek. I whispered to myself, life isn't always easy, but at least this time I chose right. Nearly a month after the trial, I received an ivory envelope with no return address, just my name handwritten in neat cursive, Zoe Green. Inside was a handwritten note, thank you for having the courage to say no. Your story in the local news gave me the strength to cut ties with my own sister who's treated me like a walking ATM. You didn't just protect yourself. You helped people like me wake up. I sat there, rereading that line again and again. Later that afternoon, 2 more emails came in. A Facebook message and a voicemail from a woman named Teresa. She shared that her own daughter had drained her financially for nearly 30 years. She ended the call with, your story helped me realize I'm not crazy, just someone who loved too hard in the wrong way. I held my phone as tears welled up. Not from sadness, but because, for the first time in my life, I realized what I did wasn't just about defense, it was about empowerment. One evening after work, while I was watering plants on the balcony, Marcus came out holding 2 glasses of red wine. Without saying a word, he placed a navy velvet box in my hand. I stared at him, stunned. Marcus? I thought I'd wait a few more months, he said. But then I realized, if there's someone I want to wake up beside every day, someone to walk through every storm with, it's you. I opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum ring with a small stone that sparkled like morning dew. My heart clenched, not because of its value, but because of its meaning. Zoe grinned. He looked straight into my eyes. Will you marry me? I nodded, unable to speak. Every wound, every scar, all melted away in that moment. Marcus's family welcomed me as if I had always been one of them. His mother, Helen, sent me her cherished pumpkin pie recipe with a note, I hope my new daughter loves this as much as we do. His sister dragged me to try on wedding dresses, asking about everything from my dream bouquet to my favorite neckline. I used to fear that joining a new family meant losing myself again. But this time, it was different. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to carry the weight. One Saturday morning, while making coffee, I opened my inbox and saw a familiar subject line. Family isn't a free pass to exploit you hits 1 million reads. The article I had posted on a mental health forum based on my own journey had gone viral. The comment section was flooded with gratitude, confessions, and questions. One comment stood out, thank you, Zoe. Because of you, I finally said no for the first time in my life. I stared at the screen, biting my lip. What used to be my deepest pain was now someone else's strength. Marcus walked in, wrapped his arms around me from behind. You know, he said, I always believed you wouldn't just survive. You'd help others rise too. I turned to him and smiled softly. Not just because of me, because of you, too. On a spring afternoon under blooming cherry blossoms by Seward Lake, Marcus and I stood beneath a canopy of pale pink petals and became husband and wife. There weren't many guests, just those who stayed beside me through my darkest days. Jason gave the speech. My brother's voice trembled as he said, I once stayed silent because I feared losing my family, but my sister taught me that real family never makes you feel afraid. They make you feel like yourself. I held Marcus's hand, tears brimming. Since the day my parents disowned me, I'd thought I'd lost all familial ties. But that day, surrounded by people who smiled for me, I realized I hadn't lost anything. I had just found my real home. That morning, I stood by the living room window, a warm cup of tea in hand, watching sunlight filter through the leaves outside our porch. Beside me was our wedding photo, Marcus's smile still as warm as ever, and my own gaze captured something I once thought I'd never find again: peace. I used to believe that family was absolute, a place where love was unconditional, a bond that couldn't be broken. But the truth is, not everyone born under the same roof deserves a permanent place in your life. It took me years to understand blood doesn't excuse betrayal. I've been called cold, selfish, ungrateful. I've been disowned by my own mother. I've sat alone in my apartment at night, asking myself if I was wrong to draw the line, even with those closest to me. But after everything, I realized this: setting boundaries isn't rejecting family, it's protecting what's left of your trust. My family used to make me feel small, indebted, and worthless if I didn't meet their sacrifices. They used the name of love to manipulate me, used familiarity to force my silence. But if family only exists when we submit, then it's not love. It's a chain. And I broke that chain, not through revenge, but through the courage to step into the light. The most incredible thing is, when I dared to walk away from those who didn't value me, life brought me to those who did. Marcus's family showed me that family doesn't require shared blood, just shared hearts. Jason, my brother, proved that blood relatives can still choose justice over silence. And Marcus, my partner, my teammate, the one who stood by me when the world didn't, is the proof of something I always longed for: a relationship built on respect and trust, not obligation. Lately, I've been writing a small column for a community psychology magazine, sharing personal experiences about escaping toxic family dynamics. The first piece was titled, "I Set Boundaries and I'm Not Sorry for It." Within 3 days, hundreds of comments poured in. Many shared how they had spent their lives trying to please their parents or siblings, only to be left drained and unheard. One person wrote, "Thank you, Zoe. Because of you, I finally stopped sending that expected monthly deposit to my mom, even though she now calls me ungrateful. I understand that pain, and I understand the relief that comes when you stop twisting yourself just to be accepted." I don't write to attack anyone. I write to remind people. Kindness doesn't mean allowing everything, and real love never demands you erase yourself. I used to fear losing my family, but now I know I lost nothing. I simply stopped holding on to relationships that no longer deserved me. I'm no longer the daughter they could guilt into silence. I'm a self-sufficient woman who knows how to love herself and is strong enough not to settle for injustice, even when it wears a familiar face. Today, when I look back, I feel no regret, no remorse, because I know if I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would have done it for me. And if you're reading this, maybe you've been through something similar. If so, I just want to say one thing: you have the right to say enough. You have the right to draw a line. And no, you're not selfish. You're brave. Zoe's story is a powerful reminder that no one has the right to use family as an excuse for wrongdoing. Blood ties should never be a cover for control, exploitation, or silent suffering. Setting boundaries, even with family, isn't betrayal. It's a declaration of self-worth and courage. Zoe didn't lose her family. She simply let go of what no longer served her and began building something better through her strength and grace. What do you think about Zoe's decision? Was she too firm, or just doing what was necessary to protect herself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories.